Good afternoon, and it's really a pleasure to be here. Some of the other speakers, Chris, have sort of touched on a few things that I wanted to talk about, but because you have to hear something 5 or 6 times for it to be retained, I'm going to say it again. I think it's hard to understand when we're announcing a project like this today. We forget where we came from, because people will say, well, you announced that about 5 or 6 months ago, and now it's happening, so boy, this must be really easy to do. And it's anything but. I want to go back actually quite a few years. Some of you in the room were here for this, others weren't. The foundation that we've started or that we've built upon really started at least 20 or 25 years ago. And that was done with the redevelopment of the depot area, the executive center, moving the library to the executive center, rehabilitating the old library to the administration building, the public safety center, creating the fountain. All of that infrastructure type of work was done under Mayor Green's administration. And that was a considerable amount of debt that the city had to undertake. But if you had not done that, we would not be sitting here today talking about this. And I think it's important to understand that these things don't happen quickly and they don't happen in a vacuum. So that was the foundation that I inherited. So then I thought to myself, what do I want this community to be? And my vision was we need to encourage people to come to our community and try to start changing the perceptions that they have of our city. So what do you do to do that? The first thing we did was the historic signage and the lighting downtown. People would come up to me and say, this doesn't look like Kankakee. The whole point. You want to look, you put a good front door on your house. So the signage was really the first thing that we did. Farmers Market had been in place, but we expanded that farmers market with entertainment, and now it has become one of the top 10 in the state of Illinois. Gave people a reason to come downtown and go back with a positive impact. Music Fest. Again, Music Fest just didn't happen. It had been a very small festival, and I turned loose young people who know music, because I don't, and said to them, we need to expand and enhance this event downtown, but we need to do it in a first-class manner. Either it's done at the best or it's not done at all. And they have exceeded my expectations for what Music Fest has become. Again, another reason to draw thousands of people downtown and with a positive experience. Then you build a stage. You have the birth of Feed. You do an arts and entertainment district. You do outdoor dining. You start to build in incremental steps all of the things that downtowns should have. Data shows you the more you invest in your downtown, the more positive those redevelopment efforts are as they branch out into the neighborhoods. So now we're ready for the next phase. The city of Kankakee met with Rock Island Growth, and we talked about doing a feasibility study and doing an apartment complex in downtown Kankakee. We felt we were ready to have people not only come and visit our community, but actually live in our downtown. Some people may have thought that that was a crazy idea. When you meet Rock Island Growth and Brian, you'll know it's not crazy. It's exactly what we should be doing. I was concerned that it was too large of a project. I wanted to start with something smaller. I have to say Chris Curtis, one of my aldermen, was like, no, we go big or we go home. Like, okay, we'll just take a deep breath and we'll do this. So we met with Rock Island. They had built the building that a version of the building that we're going to see today in Rock Island. We took a field trip to Rock Island, several of the aldermen and some city officials, to look at what they had built, which they called the locks. That building sits on land that overlooks the Mississippi River. It's a lovely building, but it really wasn't, the exterior really wasn't suitable, I thought, to our downtown because we have a much more historic, and we have a river, but it's not the Mississippi. So we have met with them several times to redesign the exterior of the building so it's much more compatible with our downtown. And I have to say that they have been extraordinary in their listening to what we would like to do and accomplishing those changes. We wanted the supports for the balconies to look sturdier. I thought they looked too thin. I'm not sure they liked having women walking around saying, I don't know what that means, but it's too thin. It needs to be thicker. We talked about brick. We talked about little things like inside the apartments. We want 4 or 6 panel doors. We want different hardware. We want all of those finishing touches that will make this a first-class place for people to live. The actual project is going to be 34 units. It's 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, market rate except for 7 that will be live work. Those will be targeted to the people who work at Riverside Hospital, St. Mary's, our library staff. We are so committed to the project. The city, as part of the funding stack that had to be done to make this project work, donated the half of the parking lot that the project is going to sit on. We have donated towards the project $1.5 million in surplus TIF funds from the downtown TIF. That's all part of our commitment to this project. I want to say, because we're at a KDC meeting, how important the partnership with the city and KDC has been. All of the items that I spoke about of how we got here have been a partnership between the city and KDC. We have done extraordinary things together, and I think it's important for the business community to see that the efforts of this entity have been so successful. We talk about stabilizing your downtown. Part of the plan is, as your downtown stabilizes, you're able to morph out into your neighborhoods. And we are doing that. If you see the River Station project being developed by Mercy Lakefront Housing, that project has started. It's being built locally by Heritage Construction, and that is now trying to stabilize the west side. We call it the west downtown area because it's so contiguous to downtown. We have branched out to the east side with a new Family Dollar, a new $15 million development at Exit 312. Those are all private developments, no assistance from the city, but you're starting to see the effect of a downtown and how it starts to expand out into the neighborhoods. It's not easy and it's not quick, but it takes a lot of dedicated time and effort. I am pleased with our relationship with Rock Island. I did not know them. We were introduced, Brian Hollenback, who I'm going to sort of go into a little bio with him, is an extraordinary individual. He understands development. He understands the financing that has to be done. What they've done in Rock Island is extraordinary. They have tapped into grants and different financing pieces that have allowed them to really redevelop a downtown very similar to Kankakee. My hope is that this will be our first project with them, not our last project. And we are very pleased to have them be partners because really the success of any community are the partnerships that you form with other entities that bring expertise to you. He has an incredible team of architects and construction people. They have done a meeting in downtown Kankakee where they've reached out to local construction people, the unions, because we would like this built locally. It's important for us that these projects create jobs in our community, and you're seeing that happen because all of these projects to date have been built by our people, and that money stays right here. So at this time, I would like to introduce Brian Hollenback, the president and CEO of Rock Island Growth Corporation. I welcome him to our community. I welcome him as a partner, and we're very pleased to have him here today. Thank you.
through. They're yours.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. It truly is an honor. When I first came to your community a few years ago, it was in this room. And I went back to my community and I said, I was so inspired that there was basically no room for anyone in this room. It was very well attended. It was rolling out of key components that your local lending community put together in a home buyers program. And I looked around and I saw the compassion as well as passion that your residents had for this community, and it inspired me. And to think that now to be able to be a part of your community, it truly is an honor to be a guest here, and we really look forward to the development that I'm about to talk with you about. Just as a lead-in, Economic Growth Corporation is a community-based nonprofit entity, and it grew out of a very unique public-private partnership, very similar to what you have here. And what we found several years ago is after completing about $170 million worth of projects in a community that had been highly distressed, lost 25% of its population base, that at the urging of several of our funders, we went into going into communities by invitation to duplicate what we had completed in our hometown and become that unique nonprofit partner that engaged the community, that really looked at a holistic approach of community revitalization beyond just the bricks and mortar. So again, we're very excited to be here. All right, this is a view of what will be wrapping around the parking lot. It does help that we've completed one similar to this. That was a good prototype, as the mayor had mentioned, with several revisions that have taken place that she identified, and very anxious. We feel that this will be certainly a catalyst for additional investment and an anchor for many years within your downtown. 34 units. The first floor, we say semi-heated. It is a controlled area for covered parking. We're also very energy conscious. So if you're expecting to have an 80-degree heated garage in January, probably not. I think you're going to be closer to 55. But it is climate controlled, and that is a significant component. That is one of the things that we have seen throughout our developments in many municipalities, is the fact that when you look at that market-driven, market-rate product, one of the non-negotiables is that you have climate-controlled and covered parking. It ranks right up there, and it probably surpasses that you have a washer and dryer in your unit. But again, making sure that we're appealing to the marketplace. It will support over 84 construction jobs locally. One of the things that is very important to us, and we'll continue to do that here, is that with each activity that we take place, we report its resilience reporting and community impact as far as where the dollars were spent. We're a nonprofit that pays property taxes. Nowhere in any of the requests that we made to the city did we look at any type of tax forgiveness. We were created to increase a tax base. So as a nonprofit, that's unique in itself, that we understand the importance of contributing back into the TIF. So we're proud that part of the reporting of this will be is to take city-owned property that wasn't generating anything into the TIF, and we'll be able to contribute back into it since you were so gracious with your contribution. I want to talk about our development team. We are a Rock Island home-based entity. Through the transition, it's been a little hard to say Rock Island Economic Growth and now doing business as Economic Growth. You'll see our presence here is Economic Growth. We're still the same entity, or EGC, or whatever we come up with a new acronym. It seems like we are getting those all together. Hooker DeJong is our architect. They're a Chicago firm, very involved with the Illinois Housing Council and policy. In fact, very happy that your mayor spoke at an assessment hearing for the extension of the state donation tax credits. That did pass the House yesterday, so we really appreciate that, Mayor. Why is that significant for this project? We were able to utilize the city's contribution and the value of the land, and we received an allocation of state donation tax credits, which is 50 cents on the dollar. So it was right around $900,000 of additional capital that we were able to leverage just from your commitment. So that's the first on the checkbox, is what did we get for our investment, is not just the product itself, but immediately we were able to get 50 cents on the dollar through that state donation tax credit. Breaking for an infomercial, it still goes to the Senate on November 29th, and we're attempting to get this extended through the veto section. It's been a tremendous economic tool for the state of Illinois, and so I encourage you to talk to your elected officials on the Senate side. All right. Construction manager, our construction manager is Bush Construction. They've built several properties for us. In fact, we had a groundbreaking in the city of Sterling, Illinois, about 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago. They are a construction manager. They represent us to manage the process, but they also understand how important it is that the work is kept local, and that is something that we will report back to you. When the bid tabulation sheets come in and we look at who bid the work, if you're potentially one of our bidders, know that this will be a public process, and we'll compare what bids you do with the competition. Because it does have a wage restriction, it makes it the competitiveness really is individual on the shop itself, how well you manage your construction crew. If you can get someone in and get them out, we know that time is money, then you're going to be able to bid more competitively because you're going to be held to the same wage requirement as your competition. And we do gather our wage reports each week. And obviously our partner here with the city of Kankakee. So what is our breakdown? You're going to see a lot of us talk about market-driven, because we're really trying to get away from all the stereotypes. Now, when we have to comply with various funding components, we put that in a box and we report it. But in our community, we really need to start retraining the way that we think. HUD is not always a bad word. In fact, how many of you realize that HUD makes market rate loans? Many people don't realize that. They think automatically when it's a HUD-insured loan that it's public housing, and that is not the case. HUD certainly insures through risk-sharing type activities 100% market rate loans. So the market-driven, what does that mean? It means that you're developing housing for a community in which they can pay the rent without being house burdened, with a focus on disposable income, because that is so significant to support the small businesses as well as the other economic development activities. We don't want people to be house poor. And so we look at what the market supports, therefore driving what the creativity of this unit mix as well as the rent ranges. So we have 17 one-bedroom, one-bath, 900 square feet, monthly rent $590 to $850. The reason that there's a variation in those rents is because for our workforce, the workforce housing, the employer-assisted housing, we want them to be able to walk to work, and hopefully we'll attract those at the employment base that the mayor identified. And we want to give them an additional incentive under workforce incentives. And this is really just laying the groundwork for some future things that we hope we'll be able to accomplish here. Then we have two-bedroom, two-baths. We have 8 of those. And then we have 9 of the two-bedroom, two-baths that actually have lofts. So these are like 20-foot ceilings. It works well for a split floor plan where you have a bedroom and a bathroom on the main level with the living room and kitchen. And then on that loft, it's open to the center area. It has a separate bedroom and bath, and then there's really a common area that's pretty significant in space that could be worked for a home office as well. And the square footages range between 900 to 1,050. I think they're closer to 1,100. And then you see the rent ranges. The 1,250 is what we consider the premier unit. That's the unit in the turret. That has all the windows around it. That third floor unit, if you're interested in a two-bedroom, two-bath, split floor plan with 2 balconies, tell I've done this a few times, right? But it has, that turret is open all the way up, so you have 2 rows of those windows, and that is certainly the premier, a premier unit, and it's priced accordingly. It is about 58,000 square feet overall. Again, the elevation. This is, the fountain would be over to kind of almost in the center of it. This is what you would see if you were walking out of the depot. This would be the view that you see. Very excited about that. And again, being able to work with your local group here and incorporating additional designs. And we've had several meetings in doing so, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. This is the site location in the aerial view. This gives you some idea of how that is placed. We're also very sensitive when you're getting into an urban environment to make sure that you're respectful of that, also that daytime parking. So you'll see that it still does allow for additional parking to continue to support the downtown businesses. We're not in competition with downtown businesses. We're here to support it and again increase that critical mass and foot traffic. Again, the breakdown of the covered parking area. This is the second floor layout. Remember, the first floor is parking, the second and third floor are the residential pieces. You'll see this broken down with balconies on each elevation. This is the third floor layout, which also provides, you see where they're identified with lofts, and this will become part of our marketing brochures that we will also include in all of our outreach efforts. And then the fourth floor, where you can see where the lofts overlook down below, the dotted line represents where that area that I was talking about. These units have been very, very popular. We have a waiting list for our product that we have downtown. Again, the east elevation and south elevation view. Again, incorporating comments locally so that it fits more within your historic downtown. So what's our timeline? What's been going on? Besides talking about this for some time, we did receive, we really appreciate the City Council's approval back on August 15th. And immediately after that, we did receive the Illinois Housing Development Authority's approval. I believe that was actually backed in August, not September. I apologize for that. But if it gives you any indication of the momentum that started around this project and the type of support that it took, is that the Illinois Housing Development Authority is a very structured component of a quasi-governmental, all right? And there goes through a series of reviews. There's a peer review, loan committee before it ever gets to the board. And in order to expedite that approval of the state donation tax credits, which took place on August 23rd, or actually the Friday after City Council that Monday, is they held special meetings. And I've been working with the Illinois Housing Development Authority for almost 20 years, and this is the first time that they have volunteered that the staff got behind a project and held special peer reviews and a special loan committee meeting in order to meet that August deadline for that allocation of tax credits. So again, the pressure's on to make sure too much is given, much is required, right? So I did want to give that shout out to the State Housing Finance Agency. On September 9th, we had our contractor outreach. It was very interesting when we did the press announcement about it, the phone calls that we received. I think we caught a few people off guard as to why are you doing this? You know, the short version is so that no one could say they didn't know about it or have a chance to bid on it. So there was some self-serving components for those type of phone calls. But it demonstrated our commitment to the community to keep the work local. It's very important. We are a community-based nonprofit developer. Therefore, everything we touch, we want to know what the direct impact is on the local community, good and bad. And we learn from each of these activities and incorporate that into our next project. Our anticipated closing date, December 2016. Now, there's a conference call today at 3 o'clock to go over some additional reviews. We're looking at our construction documents being available to the construction manager to put their finishing touches and put the bid packets out. The deadline with the architect is tomorrow, all right? And so for those of you that have been tracking, we've been trying to stay in contact with you via email to let you know when the project will be out for bid. I would say within 2 weeks, bid documents will be available. We'll make sure that everyone knows so that they have an opportunity to bid the work, okay? And then an estimated 12-month construction. We're looking at really closer to 9 to 10 months, but if I tell you 12 and we have our ribbon cutting in 10, you'll like me better, hopefully, all right? Now, further demonstration that when we're here, we really hope that we're here for a long time. And we just went through a strategic planning session with our various boards. And there's 6 entities under one umbrella. And we really looked at our long-term commitments because, believe it or not, we say no more than we say yes. We go to communities and we look at, one, strong leadership, a shared vision that is consistent with what we're looking at, and people that are committed to making a change within their home community. So one of those things that we also committed to was a community benefit agreement, and we hope that this is one of many to come. And I'll get into explaining what one of those community benefit agreement is. But what this allows us to do is, by being a nonprofit, the revenue that we generate from being a developer, we also want to continue to give back to the community. So first quarter in 2017, and we'll start ramping up about this in January, February, we want to roll it out in March, is our home buyer down payment program. And I know that you've had several. This is one that we're providing to you that comes without any income restriction. It is open to anyone. There's no asset test. You do not have to be a first-time home buyer. It's very liberal because our full intention is to create additional home buyers within the city. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide 10 homeowners or home buyers $5,000 in down payment assistance. And again, they can purchase anywhere within the city. Now, if it fits well within other type of programs, certainly it can be leveraged. It's not a lockout where it can't be utilized with other funds. If it's someone that is earning 80% the area median income, then we'll look at also combining our down payment assistance with the Federal Home Loan Bank set-aside programs. So it's written as liberal as it could be so that it has the greatest amount of participation, all right? So we hope to roll that out certainly in the spring 2017. We'll work those days out with you as it coordinates based on weather and how the market trends are going. We certainly don't want it to become an impediment to someone purchasing a home. An artist-inspired community. What is an artist-inspired community? Several years ago, our city engaged with ArtSpace to conduct a market assessment. They did a phenomenal job of really reaching out. And one of the things and the benefits that we saw from their market study is they provided us a list. They actually did interviews with artists that would be interested in living in our downtown. How many artists would have a studio space within their live workspace? We toured many of their projects. Unfortunately, the downturn in the economy post-2008 put a hold on that. That doesn't mean that the report that we received still sits on a shelf, all right? What we've done is we've pulled that report and we've started to implement it in smaller scales. Typically, their projects are around the 30-unit size or larger. We rolled out our first, and we had a ribbon cutting of it just a few weeks ago with 8 units in a 140-year-old historic building. Now, you would say, well, that's only 8 units, and I appreciate the mayor's concerns about starting off with something smaller, but I can tell you that those 8 units with the 2 commercial spaces, which represented about $2 million in development, had 11 layers of financing. Took 2.5 years to get done. And in many of these situations, the smaller projects are equally as hard, if not harder, cost the same amount, but the direct impact is only 8 units. So our phase 2 will be an additional 14. So what is an artist-inspired community? We look at the public infrastructure, the public art process, and engage in incorporating local artists into public art. This represents a variety of artists that become part of our artist walking tour. Pokemon was good to us also. For me, it's all about critical mass. I live downtown, so at 9 o'clock, sometimes I'll just go walk around to see what's going on or, where areas of concern may be and track which businesses are doing what on various evenings. And certainly, we took a few shots of our Pokemon folks downtown as well. We also look at how this fits into our public spaces within the parks. You're well on your way with this. We wanted to show you a little bit to kind of lay the groundwork. And what we did is we took a task force group from our community, and we went to the Wynwood neighborhood in Miami. If you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to do a little Google search on Wynwood outside of the mosquitoes. That's been a whole separate issue. But what took place is you saw a significant component of that old warehouse space and what an artist-inspired community can have on its direct economic impact. So we went to Wynwood in Miami. The second was, if you're not familiar, is with an international mural project in the Eastern Market in Detroit. Phenomenal work that they've completed. And then we rented a retro Winnebago RV and took a group of us down to Paducah, Kentucky to look at that. And so between those 3 areas and looking at best practices, because we all know imitation is the best form of flattery, we incorporated that into our artist-inspired community, and this is what we came up with. Within our artist live work spaces of the first 8 units that your group, when they were there a couple months ago, did a tour of, we did a call for local artists, and what we have been working toward is taking our urban alleys and converting them into pedestrian urban alleys that become part of that walking area that creates that sense of safe place, visual, well lit, from our parking lots to our downtown businesses. So this is on the side of one of the buildings. Actually, this is on the side of a restaurant that will be phase 2 of additional 14 units. And then off of the loading dock, off of the back of where our office is located, we painted the columns within the loading dock. On the front of each of these, because we are a farm community, we have corn that is growing that starts off as a trumpet. You can see why other people are more creative than I am in doing this. And then incorporating the screen, you can see, doesn't really come out too well on the front, but those are cornfields with trumpets. And again, just showing how you can creatively turn public art out of a loading dock that becomes part of a significant walkway to our downtown. The third phase of that is getting our dumpsters off of our alleys and into an artist, I guess I would say, encapsulated so that it doesn't appear, and so that our restaurants may have to walk a little bit. I'm sure I'm not the only one in this room that doesn't really care much for the grease pits and that are out in your alleys, and getting those into an area that can be attractive and hidden, most importantly. Again, you can see on the lower right-hand side, before it was developed, this is a product that we had land banked for 5 years. Evidence that we are a true community-based nonprofit, we rolled out a speculative condo project at the height of the mortgage crisis. I'm not sure it was the smartest thing we did, but it was a successful project, and we're happy that it's completed now. Then we look at also the public component. When you're looking at Artist Inspired, you've got to allow your artists the freedom to create. And in this instance, these are our intersections. This was our Metro Youth Program, and these are the various intersections within our downtown. Again, starting to see that there is a tremendous economic benefit to an artist-inspired community and what that brings in tax dollars and tax base. Then we also look at our public, even our benches. Now, we had dialogue, and I would say it was pretty well divided, about 50-50. Those that felt that your public benches needed to be black and blend in, as opposed to those that felt it was an opportunity to create art and showcase art. You saw which side won. And I'm not sure either one's more right or wrong, but we did have, again, part of our summer product with our students was incorporating the various benches throughout our downtown. Well, if you're talking to me as opposed to my construction manager and my design team, we have two different answers. We want to be sensitive to the weather, and we don't want to have additional expense to deal with the weather. I think what you're really going to see outside of mobilization is you're going to be weather-based probably around the end of February before you start seeing the dirt. Now, we'll get construction trailers coming soon, start our marketing component yet before the end of the year. Our target, we're still on target to close before the end of the year. But when it comes down to a change order to provide heat as you start to dig the foundation, I'd rather put that $20,000 for that change order into the product, into the finished product. We will start that at our groundbreaking. When we announce the groundbreaking, we will have our property manager here at the groundbreaking. We'll have applications available. We'll coordinate a very efficient way to start taking applications. We want to be real careful, and the reason that we're waiting to the groundbreaking is while these floor plans are pretty well finalized, until everything is 100% complete exactly the way it's going to be, we want to be very careful about what we put out into the marketplace so that it doesn't appear that there was any type of bait and switch there. So at the groundbreaking, we'll begin. The second piece of it is we'll let everyone know what our target date is, but we really, as far as issuing letters and signing leases and giving keys, we really wait till the ribbon cutting. That puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage, but what we have learned over the years is that construction deadlines, and by the time you're doing your final walkthrough for your certificate of occupancy, may miss a day or two. If you're lucky, it's only a day or two. And most importantly, we don't want someone giving up residency in another place without knowing that they can move in when they need to. So we're probably a little oversensitive to that, but our history has shown us that we have happier residents when we do it that way. Very good question, and we have been asked that. The mayor addressed that right away. Location was part of working with your local task force, first of all. So a lot of the community input, and we looked at several other sites, and that was the final decision based on the local input. As it relates to sound, part of the environmental review process is taking a look at sound, and so the construction materials, that is taken into consideration. Long term, we always look at, we too have developed right on the railroad tracks a very active line, and that is within quiet zones. We know that that does take a while, but again, we're looking at long-term investments, and so improvement within windows and construction, yes, and then also looking more of a permanent solution within a quiet zone. So when that comes up, please show your support for that. Did that answer it for you? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm not quite familiar with where your office is, but what I can tell you is, okay, this sits back a little bit farther from the fountain, so we've been able to preserve significantly amount of public parking space. That was something by the task force that was identified. I can't give you the exact parking space numbers other than it was something that was identified early on as a priority so that we didn't take everyone's parking spaces. Yes, ma'am. It sits farther back, so your parking should still be there. But I will tell you that it was a topic that was discussed quite a bit. Again, one of the reasons of us being a community-based developer is it doesn't do any benefit if by creating one thing, we create more of a hardship the other way. So I believe we've met a very good balance between the two. We looked at another parking lot, but we didn't want to compete with the farmers market. We looked at some other areas that currently have some blighted structures on them for demolition with new construction. And I think that they are both provide an opportunity for a second phase. But it also required acquisition of some properties that were owned by the private sector, and timing was so important. We had a unique window to access that additional $900,000 of state donation tax credits. So instead of trying this stuff is hard enough, and instead of trying to force something that the timing just didn't allow, it was identified as a possibility for a phase 2, again within the downtown. What our history has been within Rock Island is a community of about 40,000 people. Within the downtown component, we've developed through a variety of different floor plans and buildings over the years, close to about 300 units. What our market has been consistent at is 25 to 35-year-old and 50 or older. The empty nesters that have chosen to sell their larger home and perhaps winter in Florida or Arizona, they become more then allow for families to purchase their homes. That's been what our market has shown. And to respond to that, we had a ribbon cutting about a month ago, also to showcase something that we picked up from Omaha, Nebraska, which is a single-family new construction product in an urban environment. And we hope that what we've seen is that as people start to raise children, that they go back into the single-family home with the dog, the fence, the garden. So we'll let you know how that goes. It's a pilot program. It's 7 units. And that's the way that we hope that we'll deal with also keeping our families downtown also. 25 to 35, 25, 35, 50 and older has been our population. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.